It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.
Evidence alone doesn't change systems. People do. So how do we get data into the hands of the right decision makers at the right time? Welcome to EdTech Mondays Nigeria, a platform that facilitates critical conversations on the use of technology for teaching and learning. I am Chinyelu Akpa, your host, and it's great to be here again. This week, we'll be concluding the very interesting series we started on evidence in EdTech for improved learning outcomes. We have discussed designing for impact and adapting evaluation frameworks to local realities. Today, as we conclude, we focus on what happens next, how evidence can move from research papers into real policy, real schools, and real outcomes. Joining me today to wrap up these very interesting conversations are two amazing women who have done justice to education in Nigeria and across the continent. Our first guest is a seasoned education leader with deep expertise in instructional design, program management, and digital learning. She currently leads leadership and development at New Globe Nigeria, supporting teacher training and education transformation across 6,000 schools and state-led programs such as Kwara Learn, Bayelsa Prime, and Jigawa Unites. With a track record that spans capacity building at TEP Learning Academy and policy reform through the MacArthur-funded On Nigeria program, she is passionate about leveraging technology to improve education and employability in Africa. She is the publisher of edusport.com, a platform connecting African youths to global education and career opportunities. Join me as I welcome Ibirunke Olurotimi. Hello, Ibirunke. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Chinyere.
Great. And our next guest is another formidable education leader and social impact advocate who currently serves as the programs director at Teach for Nigeria, where she leads initiatives to improve foundational literacy and numeracy, develop leadership, and drive systemic change. She collaborates across teams, aligns strategies with organizational goals, and represents programs to the board and external stakeholders. She also founded Period Talk with Bosede, a project addressing sexual abuse, menstrual hygiene, and girls' education. She's a global voice in education equity and actively contributes to international networks like Teach for All and has spoken at forums including Teach for Nigeria and the Global Education Skills Forum. Join me today to welcome Bosede Ogidon. Hello, Bosede. It's good to have you here.
Hi, thank you.
Great. So, quite formidable bios here. And I believe you both have all the wealth of experience to speak about evidence when it comes to EdTech. And I know that you're bubbling to give us a piece of your mind when it comes to how truly we are documenting evidence of EdTech in impacting learning outcomes. So I'll start with you, Ibirunke. What does evidence-informed decision-making really look like in a Nigerian state or in a local government or, lower down setting? And I ask this because I know how much work you've done working with states and helping them, use EdTech and getting data that is supposed to be useful for governance and decision-making. So what does this evidence-informed decision-making for education really look like when you put EdTech by the side?
Just thinking about it and within the context of the places where we have worked, it looks like having an integrated data system that helps to connect just pupil enrollment, which is something that we have seen in places where we've worked, pupil enrollment, teacher performance matrix, pupil assessment, resource mobilization, being able to see all of that at a glance. So education officers or education leadership is able, at the state and at the local government level, they are able to take this data. So the data in their hands is not just like a report, but it's a living document where they can make decisions, they can look at attendance levels, they can look at how attendance levels, impact on teacher lesson progression or teacher lesson completion rates, and even how pupil attendance in school also affect, teachers being in school. So just really having a very robust system where education leaders and education officers can look at the data that is being collected across board. And when I mean across board, across enrollment figures, what is happening in a typical classroom on a single day, like how many pupils were in class today, like how many lessons did the teacher complete today, was the teacher in school at all, was the head teacher in school, because of course we also recognize the impact of school leadership on how a school performs, and it also translates to how pupils in that particular school perform. So really having access to all of that data in a robust system that helps them to map a journey between how all of these data points connects to each other and helps to improve learning outcomes. So at the state level, for example, in a state like Kwara State, you see a situation room that has all of these data points that I just mentioned. So an officer can walk into that situation room and see what is happening in a school that is several miles away from the state capital. They can tell exactly what's happening in a remote school in a village. Or there's flooding in a particular community. I want to even see how that impacts on attendance in this school real time. So, being able to have that kind of information at your fingertips helps to make very great decisions. At the state level, we can say they're a bit far from, from the school level. But if you look at the local government level, for example, in a local government where something suddenly happens and the education secretary and, all the other officers can quickly take a look at the data and say, what is happening in this particular school? Can the education secretary send a delegation to this school and really find out why this is happening? So evidence-based decision making should be such that education leaders have access to the information that they need at every given time, and they can make informed decisions based on that data.
Okay, great. Bosede, now I want to ask you the reverse of this. Okay. Because I know that with Teach for Nigeria, for instance, the bane of what you do is working with the barest minimum.
Yeah.
So there is that bit where there isn't even the technology, to support this decision making. So what is the impact of the lack of this evidence on how your operations or what you've seen on the ground, how your fellows are able to support teaching and learning? Because what I want to get out of this is there really a need for EdTech and gathering evidence because you work with the best of the best. And but you don't work with the best of the best, you work with the barest minimum. Yeah. Technology or the absolute lack of it.
Technology. Yeah.
So what does the lack of evidence mean for you? What's that picture? How does it affect your work or not?
Okay, thank you so much. So while I was listening to her and she was like, oh, there's this orb. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's one state. Because it's not, I don't think I've seen it. So we place our fellows in rural communities, like you said, barest, like where there are no access to network, where there are no access to technology. Schools where children do not have access to computer system. Most of these children haven't even seen a computer system. Now, there is always lack of evidence in cases like that. And I'm going to make reference to foundational literacy and numeracy. So we're currently piloting the implementation of foundational literacy and numeracy. And why did we do this? In 2022-2023, we collaborated with Teach4 to carry out a study that was sponsored by RAND. It's called RAND Study, on what is the impact of our program on student academic outcomes and non-academic outcomes. And when we did that, we realized that for literacy and numeracy, where we have our fellows, students have a bit of 1 to 3 months of learning gains. But what happens to the classes where there are no fellows? And so we did that comparative analysis. And then based on that, we said we need to improve beyond our own classroom. We need to improve literacy and numeracy in classes. Now, we don't really have evidence to show that how are children moving from one level to another level. I think what we do have now is standardized tests, and once they do it, the result just comes out and everybody goes on.
And there's a no failure thing in most places, in most
public
states.
schools. I think for public schools now, if you're in primary school, you don't repeat a child.
Yeah, you just
keep moving the child forward and forward. And when you look at that, with lack of evidence, how would education officers, like you said, how would policymakers in education be able to know the right thing to do? How would they be able to know what are the right tools? And like I said, there are even communities, local government, that do not have access to technology, right? Public school teachers are still using paper and pen when it comes to recording tests, when it comes to standardized tests. What we have done at Teach for Nigeria, we also have to do that, because when we place fellows in communities where there are no technology, where there is no access to network or internet facility, we had to resort to paper and pen. So we had to literally go to those communities. 4 months ago, I had to go to like 7 communities to do listening tour on what is the level of their students from A to be, so that we can even get a concrete data to work with.
And all of this is paper-based.
Yes, paper-based. Because you can go with your gadget, but which network are you? Because you're not going to come with a network, definitely.
You're not going to carry with your own server.
You can't carry your own server. Even if you carry, it won't work there.
Okay.
Right?
That's Nigeria.
Yeah. And it's not far-fetched. Ogun State. There are places in Ogun State, for example, and I'm just using places that are even closer to Lagos. There are places in Lagos. If you go to in the interior part of Badagry, interior part of Ibejuleki, you'll be shocked at what you see. So I know that the government cannot do this alone. There is still a lot to be done. When I hear 20 million out of school children, and I'm wondering, okay, how did they get the data? You understand? It's so easy to say, okay, the numbers will just keep increasing, and you're multiplying the number. But where? Do we even have a central data system in Nigeria? Let's start with that. Do we? So, for example, if I have a child and I got transferred to another state, maybe in Delta, and I want to move my child, maybe my child is in public school, I'm going to start again by re-enrolling that child. If we have a central data system.
We have now.
Yes,
it's called the National Education Data Initiative. Just launched.
Okay.
And I hope it goes well enough to give what you're asking for now, because it should solve that problem. But please continue.
Okay. So I hope that there will be enough awareness about this. And then you still have to start again. But I know that Ogun State did something. They call it Ojisera, which is an impressive platform. So if you move your child from a particular school, the child still retain, it's like a matric number.
Yes,
that
which
number,
is what Ned
and
is
is able to
trying
move
do.
to another school without any problem. That's just one out of, we have 37
Several.
states, right? What happens to some other states in the north? When we're talking about out of school children, we don't segregate and say from the southwest, we are not a lot. It's the north. No, it's Nigeria.
It's a
right.
Nigerian
So
problem.
the lack of evidence is really affecting a lot of things. It's really affecting how even education officer, policy makers in education system, how they are able to support not only the government schools, but even non-profit that are coming into this system to see what can we do to make things better. How can we continue to provide quality education for children? But we can't continue to do that if we do not have evidence to back it up. So most of us, non-profit, had to go into the interior to get this data ourselves.
Okay, so let's talk about one very important bit. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that we recognize the fact that there are a number of places in Nigeria where, we have this kind of constraints that she's mentioned. Of course, everywhere is not Lagos, and everywhere is not Ilorin, and everywhere is not
Jigawa or Bayelsa or Edo.
State capital.
Yeah.
So we've designed our technology in such a way that it works in very low network environments. So for example, we have schools within our network that are located in places where there's absolutely no network, but it still works because we've designed it in such a way that it doesn't need network to work. If the head teacher, who is like the person who has a repository of data in a school, anytime the head teacher has access to a network area, everything just sync to the server. But that doesn't affect what happens in the classroom. The teacher still teaches with their teacher tablets. They still take attendance. They still mark their own attendance, take pupil attendance, and all of those things are contribute to the available repository of data that we have, and that education managers can also take advantage of. So I just thought to, chip
that
that in. Yeah, because that's like a solution that works for low constraints environment like
So
that.
my next bit would be, with all this data that EdTech organizations that work in Nigeria are gathering, and I'm going back to you, Bosede, because this is your problem.
Okay.
What is the ease of accessing this data that all these EdTech organizations are accumulating? Because we have the likes of you and so many other organizations that have data, who have worked in communities, localities, states, programs, projects, foundational literacy and numeracy, digital literacy, a lot of areas in education. But all this data are warehoused in separate organizations, and there really isn't data interoperability. So what does, because if we're saying evidence, of EdTech for improved learning outcomes, there has to be a bit of data interoperability where people are syncing information, and I know what's happening in Kwara, you've done a project in Anambra, I can get what you have, and you have something in Enugu, and one person can get into a system or a database or something that gives that information. So do you feel that we have
That
data,
access.
yes, that access when it comes to all of this data that we are amassing?
Thank you for that question. Right? So when it comes to access, right, I wouldn't say there isn't, and I wouldn't say we have like that. But let's say maybe let me sit on the fence on this. I know that there are several organizations that are, collating data to just help. How do we improve learning outcomes for children in schools across Nigeria? And I will make reference to TEP Center. I know that TEP Center, do collate data when it comes to foundational literacy and numeracy. And they've been kind, to share this as often as possible to say, okay, this is this is where we are at when it comes to reading comprehension, when it comes to mathematics operation for children in age grade 2 to 4, thereabouts. And it has been helpful because when we are also talking to partners, to government stakeholders, we're able to bring the statistics to share with them that this is what is obtainable and this is what we're trying to do to salvage the situation. And so I just make reference to one organization. And listening to you, right, it's like, okay, I didn't know that you guys have that. Okay.
Now
okay.
you do.
So I think organizations that have access, that have been able to put together or curate this data, should just also create awareness. Because sometimes you might be curating data for your own organization and it's not open for others. Do you understand? It might not be open for others, but when we start creating awareness, just like you mentioned that now we now have a central data, it's good to hear. But then how do we create awareness about this so that organizations like Teach for Nigeria, other organizations are able to leverage this data to inform some decisions that we make when it comes to providing quality education for children?
Listening to you, and also to add to what she has said, our organization collects a lot of data, from time to time.
A ton of data.
Yeah, a ton of data, because we have real-time data that comes in like by the minute.
Yes.
We also carry out continuous assessments of literacy and numeracy levels in the states where we work. And even in some states where, maybe we're about to begin our work. And so I also want to make reference to the fact that our data is public. If you go on our website, you'll find, our past reports, and, we keep churning this out. Okay. Yeah, I agree to the awareness part. Yes, there should be a lot more awareness, so that people can take advantage of this data. Organizations that need to use this data can have access to it. Yes, I also know about the Learn Nigeria data, which is collected by TEP Center. Fantastic, data repository where people can actually say what the learning levels of children are, which is great. And I totally agree with the point that there is a lot of awareness that is still needed, by education organizations so that people can have access to the data that they need. And I'm happy about, what you talked about, the National Education Data Initiative. Yeah, it's going to be a very fantastic opportunity for a lot of development and education organizations to be able to access data that they need at every given time.
Great. So, parting shots. Because I know that if I leave both of you, you're going to advise the whole of Nigeria on how to use data for, improve learning outcomes. So, parting shots now. How can the government really put in place systems that support EdTech organizations to collect data effectively? And I ask this because on this show, we've come to agree that education cannot remain the sole prerogative of governments.
Yeah.
So how can government support organizations who are already doing this work to effectively collect data and share the data and ensure that this data is used for informed decision making, as you mentioned in your beginning statement, Sibironke?
Two things come to mind. The first one being technical partnership. The truth of it, just like you have mentioned, is that the government can't do everything. However, the government is still the largest provider of education.
Yes.
And so any organization, that wants to make meaningful impacts that, at scale, must definitely work with the government. First of all, like I said, technical partnerships must be in place, which we have seen, working across several states in Nigeria, like at New Globe and also at Teach for Nigeria, like she has mentioned in Ogun State. I think the second thing, which is the most critical in my own opinion, is resource allocation for sustainability. And when I mean resource allocation, I mean, so beyond the technical partnerships, what are the states doing to ensure that whatever systems have been put in place continue to exist beyond every political transition? So if we have a robust education management information system, is there a line item in our budget that helps us to continue to maintain this, that helps us continue to train the people that can use this management information system in a way that serves everybody, so that everybody within that particular state or ecosystem has access to the data that they need? And we also have people that can even take that data within the government and can make actionable insights out of it. They can make decisions in the interest of the children, because at the end of the day, learning outcomes is the goal. It's not just about amassing all of this data, and we really cannot drill down to how it is improving learning in the classroom.
Thank you. And
Okay. I think you're sort of answered but I'm just going to add this because we have more government schools than I think private. Yeah. So capacity building for data collectors, and I mean teachers now.
Yeah.
Because you cannot collate data behind them.
Yeah.
They are the ones in the field. They are the ones on the field doing this work. How are we even training them? So the support from the government. I know that there are different organizations. Even we do trainings for teachers. But the government have to be open to more partnership with non-profit organizations on how to properly train these teachers, ed teachers, on data collection. Because within their classroom, it's an avenue to collect data. It's an avenue to collect data within the local government, the districts, down to state, and it then goes to federal like that. Being open to partnership on the part of the government.
I'm not expecting so many things.
Exactly. Another thing is, I mentioned that there are some locality that do not have access to network and all things like that. But there are things that government can put in place that non-profit cannot probably do that. Maybe access to road network. Let's start with that, because there are some schools, even all these data collectors find it hard to go there. I believe that they find it hard. So sometimes you have distortions in data collection, right? How about them just providing basic amenities to schools within different locality? We realize that we understand that there are urbans and rural areas, but there are rural. Now the government need to come to the aid of these schools. How about putting things together? I've been to a school where we put things together to go for data collection, and the truth is most of these things were stolen by the time we got there the next day. Because the school it's in a volatile area, so of course. But these are not things that we or New Globe can put in place. It's something that government. Now imagine children going to those schools. What are they going to turn out to be? Because those are the people there are their role models. So those are just the two things, because I think she has really spoken about the technical part. But there are other things that we cannot be able to do, but except the government comes, to rescue that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ibirunke and Bosede. It's been an amazing short time listening to both of you. But one thing is clear, that there are several organizations who are doing very fantastic work gathering data, and there needs to be that handshake between government, even within organizations, some bit of, I'd say workshops to help people know what's available around this data that we are collecting and how they can be used, communicating with the government, and the governments opening up their doors to get in more partnerships that can support them to know the right type of EdTech solutions to use that would give them the right kind of data they need, that would then support them for informed decision making that can transform education and learning outcomes in states, local governments, and national level. Thank you so much, Ibirunke, and thank you, Bosedi, once again.
Thank you.
And to you, our listeners, it has been an amazing 4-part series on the role of EdTech in giving us evidence for improved learning outcomes. Would love to hear from you. How has EdTech supported you as a guardian or as a user of technology, or your children, and has helped them get improved learning outcomes? Or it can just be learning gains. Have they moved from one level of proficiency and have just gone up a notch by using EdTech? Or, as I said the last time, has it been detrimental? Has EdTech made their learning worse? Did EdTech cause more harm than good for you? Would love to hear from you. Send us an SMS or a WhatsApp message to any of our telephone lines, 0703 165 0809 or 0706 402 0742. We would love to hear from you. And if you know anyone that missed this episode or any of the episodes of this month's series, do not worry, we have it all archived for you on YouTube. Hurry now to CC Up Africa to watch the amazing conversations we had today and over the past weeks. Also listen to us on Spotify, EdTech Mondays Nigeria. And remember, we have a very vibrant and active Telegram and WhatsApp community. Do well to join us on EdTech Mondays Nigeria on WhatsApp and on Telegram. Join the conversation. And who knows, you might be the next guest here next month. Until I come your way, same time, same station, I remain your host, Chinyelu Akpa. Keep using technology to push the barriers on education. It's bye for now.
It's time for EdTech Mondays, brought to you by MasterCard Foundation and CC Hub.